Again, hi everyone. Super happy to host today. I'm Dan Hoffman, CEO and founder of Circl.es, partner of Yoles. Um, you're in for a little bit of a ride because what we're going to be doing today in part is talking about circles, but actually we're going to do one. And test a brand new feature of our company's technology, which we call breakout circles, using circles as a breakout in combination with Zoom. So I'll talk for a few minutes, give you a little bit of background, and then we'll go to those breakouts, and then we'll come back, and I'd love to hear your experiences. Everybody up for something new? Raucous applause. Great. Thanks, Jamie. I've been thinking a lot about human connection. This COVID thing is really weird, right? Is it making us closer? Is it making us farther? Is it social distancing or is it physical distancing? I mean, if you ask my mom, she's never been closer to our 10 and 12-year-old grandkids because they're spending dedicated time in these conversations that they didn't before. And she's not living with us in a bubble. And I think what's happening is the world has shifted. It's given us a new perspective on this question of how we connect with each other. I just started reading Vivek Murthy's book. It's called Together. He was the last Surgeon General of the US. And he saw every health crisis and chose to write about loneliness in his book, to write about the connection crisis. And this is not new. He believes it's becoming epidemic in the US and underlies a lot of our other issues. There was a great TED Talk and a study that was called Blue Zones that went around the world. And if shaking your head, Michael, right? Where they profiled little spots of geography in our geography where people outlive everyone else. And it wasn't diet and it wasn't climate, it was connection. It was the social patterns of friendship and family that result in these, 115-year-old people who are still hanging out with their childhood friends. So our work at Circl.es has been using the structure of a circle to produce connection so that people can learn and work together better. We're obsessed with this structure of a circle. And I think this is it's been a really interesting time for us as a company because our perspective on connection is kind of up for grabs. Time to deconstruct. I'm gonna share my screen. And let's see if I can manage these logistics. Okay. It is not a new idea, right? It's telling stories around a campfire. It's a feeling that many people have when they think back to a team or a school experience or sometimes even a family or a spiritual experience. We know this feeling of being in a circle, but it's also not ubiquitous. One of the big learnings for me is just how much our world is constructed in rows, not in circles. Our classrooms. When I started this work, I didn't think we were going to be building a video environment, but I found that every video provider we ran into starts with the metaphor of a presentation, just like a classroom. One person is really big and everyone else is in rows. And so what you'll experience in a little bit is our attempt to change the shape of that, but it really is ubiquitous. What do I mean by a circle? Three things. First, it's a small group. So easy to build a big audience. It's so easy that very often we pack the house so full, it ends up being a shallow experience. We do this at work with teams. You know, a sales manager can run 20 sales reps, a customer service manager 25, because we have the technology to monitor everyone. So much so, Amazon famously over or reacted with their two pizza rule. No team will be so big they can't share two pizzas for lunch, right? This single-digit pizza. There's single-digit teams. There's a lot of research around that, because after you get bigger than like a dozen, the communication overhead outweighs that tax, outweighs the intimacy and the team effect. Pre Parker wrote this great book called How Do We Gather, and where she introduces this idea of you have to close the door. You know, small groups. The second piece is inclusive dialogue, right? There are two studies that really influenced our work. You know them both. Brian, you're from Google, actually, right? There was this group at MIT, Carnegie Mellon 20 years ago, and then the Google Aristotle Project. Both studying, maybe you can chime in and correct me, but you know, both when you look at this question of what makes successful teams, both in different ways concluded psychological safety, and both concluded in different ways that the magic ingredient is being heard. It's equal talk time in producing psychological safety and then effective teams. And that's had a huge impact on us. I think we know this. When you feel safe, you're engaged. When you feel safe, you bring out your best ideas. You can get goofy. It fuels innovation. When you feel safe, you can talk about that iceberg underneath the water, that challenge that could sink the whole thing, but you're scared to bring it up. So this idea is super commercial. A lot of us are working on it. What makes you feel safer, right, than being heard? And that brings me to this all too rare idea of conversations instead of presentations. We pack our rooms not only filled with people, but with content. It's 50 minutes of talking and 5 minutes of questions. It's more than we can possibly absorb, right? And so much of the world works this way, but we know that, you know, we grown-ups in particular only learn in dialogue. We learn when we make relevance. We learn the way the brain is the required neuroscience moment. You know, the brain, neurons are built making connections to other neurons. We've got to look at a thing from different perspectives, the way a word is defined by other words in a dictionary. We learn in conversation. And so circles aren't about the content. Circles are about the people, about their actual problems. We have this idea we call sparks, where shrink down the presentation to a few minutes. TED, we do a lot with TED, you know, maybe TED Talk length. It's a controversial idea. It's a question, right? It could be a single framework, and then let's apply. Let's bake it in. Conversations over presentations. And so when that's what we call a circle. These three elements are present. A small group having real-time inclusive dialogue that's facilitated so people are actively participating, and it's not about the text, it's not about the material, it's about what's actually going on with them. And then it's rinse and repeat. People meeting in circles build trust over time. It gets better and better in two dimensions. This is a framework that we've taken from Amy Edmondson, Stanford professor, who talks about this magic zone. She calls it the learning zone. When you balance openness with accountability, I'm totally open with these people and I count on them. The good peer pressure, they're pushing me to get that action done. They're pushing me to come to the table. They're pushing me to be my best self. If it's all openness, there's no result. If it's all performance pressure, we're not optimized for the great idea or the real challenge or the bigger, deeper conversation. So it's this balance that great teams and great sessions have, and we've seen it get better and better and better over time as people move into this magic zone. So rinse, repeat. That's the heart of our work. I mean, we've gone around the world and seen all of these places where people are using circles and have done a lot of connecting the dots. There are a lot of circles in the world. You may have had a peer learning experience, a mastermind, YPO forum. I'd connect this to what people do in Scrum, where structure drives the meeting. There's growing in small business world, EOS level 10 meetings. We've seen it in our work with Harvard, where Harvard Business School is our biggest client, and they literally built dorms where 8 people are around a common room. They call them living groups, and we built their virtual living group. And I think this is gaining momentum in the world as there's a super big reaction to the packed house, to the tsunami of content, to the need for real connection, not just Facebook connection. So I guess the point is you can get good at circles. And here's the breakout group punchline. There are a few really simple things and a few really simple tools that can transform a team or a group into this magic zone. And I think it's the superpower for leaders. It's really interesting in this time of COVID to think about whether we're in a webinar with 100 people or whether we're in that deliberate inclusive circle kind of structure that can actually make connections more deep, more real, more powerful. Let me come up for air. We're about to experience one. I'm going to double click on this idea that you can learn to be good at circles, and we're going to move you into our technology in the first ever public test of our breakout circle integration. So I'd very much love to see how you experience it. But before we do that, you'll be off for about 25 minutes. Does anybody have a quick question or a clarification, or are totally lost by my spiel? And Darren, I'm assuming you're all ready. Let's see, do we need to unmute?
Sorry, I couldn't find myself. We just had one person just join, so I quickly added them up. So,
hello, Jason.
Yeah, we're good. Dan, I added you to a breakout circle if you would like to join.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so you can look yourself up in the link reader if you need it.
Anybody got a question before we go to that part of the world? Brian, I'm curious if I've characterized the Aristotle project in a relevant way, since I understand you're...
Yeah, I think you have, and I appreciate the fact that you focus primarily on psychological safety, because that was far and away the single most relevant outcome from Project Aristotle. Everything else is kind of also ran in terms of the other 4 attributes that we found. But yeah, without psychological safety, the other 4 don't matter. And
do you buy my interpretation that one of the outcomes of the project was this idea of equal talk time being the magic bullet, equal participation in producing safety on teams, or am I going too far with that?
I think that's a little more detailed than I would characterize it. It's not really a quota of talk time. It's a matter of, do I feel safe saying things like, oh, you know that outage last night? That was my fault. I was on call and I issued the wrong command. Or, you know that thing that you asked me to do? I don't know how to do that. Can you help me figure that out? Or,
yeah.
Or a sense of, wait a minute, I don't think that's a good idea. Can we reevaluate that? And so being able to push back or take, claim accountability or say, I don't know. Those are I would say are the 3 biggest hallmarks of a safe team.
Awesome. I guess our claim is that using the structure of a circle, you get there faster. And so I don't only mean the physical shape, I mean those 3 components, and some of the microstructures that help people facilitate the path to get there. So if everyone's up for an experiment, let's do it. I'm going to, let me just share my screen one more time. And I'll give you your instructions. Circles breakouts. Okay. So Darren, are we going into 2 or 3? Oh, every time I screen share, it automatically mutes you all.
I had already muted myself anyway.
Oh, I see.
We're in 2 breakouts now.
Okay, great. Is anyone, so I notice one person is connecting and not using video, which will make this a less ideal experience. Is everybody on a computer that is running, can run Chrome or Firefox? Not a tablet? We're good. Great. So what we're going to do is I'm going to paste just a link into the chat. You'll find your name. We're going to keep the Zoom open. If you have trouble, come back and chat to me for any reason. This is a test. And once you get there, one of our Circl's team will take the lead and facilitate a quick conversation. And when we're done, we'll see you back here. So the whole thing should take about 25 minutes. Good. Let me open the chat and paste my link. And I will see you all. I'm going to be hanging out here back in about 20 minutes. There you go. Link in the chat. Have fun.